It starts with an itch and a tingle, and then it builds and expands. And suddenly, all at once, my legs won't let me stand. I scratch till my fingers go numb.
Welcome back to Suicide Sucks podcast. And if this is your first time being here, thanks for joining us. It's always good to have new people. Just a little bit about how I set up this podcast and why. It was basically because I lost my brother to suicide in 1996. And I've always believed that there's real power in listening to lived experiences. So hearing from people stood in the shoes of somebody struggling with their mental health can make such a difference, because the conversations obviously remind us that we're not alone. And, you know, we also interview people who run support groups, so it's trying to share that as well, what's in your area. Some of the conversations we have are difficult and raw, but ultimately they are stories of hope, and that is what it's all about, you know, showing people that there's another option. And if you have got a story to tell and you need to tell it, then please do get in touch. You can go onto the website www.suicidesucks.co.uk and you can fill in a guest registration form on there. Now today in the van we have Ozzy and we have Shaun. Welcome, Shaun.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me.
You're welcome. And we've both got a cuppa. I've got tea, Shaun has got black coffee, no sugar. And we've got a little plate of biscuits that we can dive into if we so wish. And if you're interested in what they are, they're chocolate digestives. And plain, dark, milk, which is your preference? We've had a debate about this in our house at the moment. But it's milk chocolate for me, that's why we've got those.
That's fine.
So, Shaun, the reason I got in touch with Shaun is because I came across the fact that he'd set up a support group called Monday Nights, and that's Nights, K-N-I-G-H-T-S. And I was really intrigued about what that was all about. And he's going to go into some detail about what it was that made him set that up. And a little bit about Shaun. Back in late 2023, Shaun was working alongside a counsellor and a former counselling client to create some podcast content focused on mental health. And during those conversations, and while trying to figure out the direction they wanted to take, Shaun experienced something that completely cemented his belief that his work mattered. So, as I say, Shaun, welcome to the van.
Thank you.
You've met Ozzy. He's, as usual, fast asleep. People that have listened to my episodes before will know that we start with the obvious question, well, obvious to me. Can you please tell our listeners something about a dark day that you may have had, maybe one of the dark days that might stand out that you would like to share?
Yes, I think probably reflecting on you having sort of primed me with that question as something to think about. Maybe certainly not as dark as some people have experienced, but having also done mental health first aid training, it was an eye-opener for me that I had dark days, and realising those sort of really cemented what I was wanting to do. And for me, that probably the most prominent dark day was a really bad experience I'd had in work, where going through a phase where people had been made redundant, I inherited a lot of extra work and a lot of pressure, to the point where I was probably struggling to get more than 4 hours a night sleep. Work was constantly on my mind. Didn't have a particularly good boss that I inherited as part of that process. And it came to a head, and ultimately we parted ways. And the dark day, or the dark moment at that point really, was sitting in the car knowing, right, I've got some things to do, I need to go, and I'm going to do this, that, the other. But I did have that, that thought that goes through probably so many people's minds of, I'd probably be better if I wasn't here, and I think I'm a resilient enough person to have probably never gone that far. But the frame of mind, the pressure that put me in, made me at least sit and think, am I a burden to other people? Would I be better off, or would they be better off rather, if I wasn't here?
Absolutely.
and removing yourself from that. And undoubtedly, the people that take it to the ultimate ending have started with little thoughts like that,
Yeah.
and they build up.
And just on that
and that's
note,
that's where that can take you if you don't have that strength or the family support network sometimes and the ability to talk to them.
yeah.
Would put
And
you
on
there.
that note, you talk about the thoughts and the fact that, not everybody admits that we have those thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And according to Mind, it's 1 in 5 of us
Yeah.
that have had suicidal thoughts. And that to me is always shocking, because more often than not, you might be in a group of people and there's 5 of you.
Yeah.
And that's only the people that are being honest.
Yeah.
If you're asked that question, a lot of people are going to say, no, I'm fine. No, I don't have
Yeah.
I don't have depressing thoughts.
And we all have that sort of British keep your chin up and that suck it up attitude that's been just embedded in us as a way
Yes.
of life for so long. And that particular point is something that I've not really spoken about particularly to many people at all. My wife Donna would probably go, "You've never told me about that."
Yeah.
And we had a situation where my mum, she passed at Christmas actually, but 6 years ago she had a fairly innocuous looking car accident, and she suffered a fractured sternum, bruised heart and lungs. She ended up in a coma for, I think, 3 months or so after that. And
Wow.
Induced coma initially and then struggled to get her out of it, various complications. And in that time, the job I was doing, I was up and down the country and trying to be sort of supportive and strong for my family, assuring my sisters that mum would be okay, but thinking, I'm going to be hundreds of miles away and we're going to get that call. And that really did play on my mental health. And that I think that was the time when I first really properly recognised sort of how other things and other events can impact upon you. And my breaking point in that was at a company conference where the HR people were talking about another member of the team from IT who had basically gone AWOL for a week. He'd had a mental breakdown.
Right.
And I was sat in there trying to sort of engage with it, but just thinking I just want to go to my room and cry. And that was kind of probably the first point that I really realised, that mental health was a thing.
Yeah.
And in the years since then, I've got more and more involved in things. I'm a serial volunteer.
Are you?
By nature, so I get into all sorts of things. And it was getting into doing the podcast with the guys that we ended up starting Monday nights with was kind of the catalyst probably to the bigger thing, and that came about just pretty much by chance. We talk about chance and things happening for a reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was a reason. It was a chain of events in probably the second half of that year that led to a couple of events and experiences that led to starting at Monday nights.
Fantastic. And so what was there, because there was some form of coincidence, as we
Yeah.
say, wasn't there, that actually made you think that you were doing the right thing as well?
Yeah, definitely. So how that came about, the whole thing with them was we got approached. So I'm part of a community media company, and we do a community radio station. And I'd had an interest in podcasting, and I'd been doing some stuff myself. And we got approached by this gentleman, and he's like, we want to do something to get the word out about mental health. And Carl had been, he'd had issues with his own mental health, and he'd been with his counsellor, and his counsellor, as a pair, outside of all of that, they wanted to do something and spread the word, and whether it would be YouTube or for podcasting or whatever. And we settled on, let's start with a podcast. Let's just start with the audio bit.
Yeah.
Get you comfortable talking about it sort of openly, and it can be shared and distributed. And if you want to progress on and do video afterwards, then we can do that. So we made a start of doing that, getting them going with the podcasting. I was at the time doing a podcast of my own about, it was called Psychics and Sidekicks. So it was all about mediumship and people with psychic abilities and
Wow.
experiences and things like that.
Are you psychic
And
yourself?
I'm not, no.
Okay.
I have actually been told by one of the people I interviewed that I do have an ability, but we've not explored that.
Right.
My work's just been so busy that it's kind of taken me away from it for a while.
So
But
what
certainly
made you
something
pick
that I would
on
do
that topic?
So I have a friend who's a psychic
Right.
medium, and going back to volunteering, myself and Donna, we were both Army Cadet adult instructors for a few years, and that was where we met Andy. And I was doing some work with Andy when he was going around doing his evenings, and we were recording that and giving people a recording of the sessions and of their little sort of their snippets that they'd had. And it got me interested in doing it, and I just got more and more curious about it, because I was absolutely one of these on the fence people. It's like there's definitely more to everything around us than just what we see and feel. Excuse me. And seeing Andy in action was like, yeah, there definitely is. You know, this was kind of a turning point. And so we'd seen Andy at a couple of sessions, and that was where we first met him, was at an adult event. The adult instructors had some entertainment on one weekend at a camp, and Andy walked into this room as a complete stranger and started talking to people about various things, and I was like, wow, this is really blown away by it. And so it sort of sparked an interest. And it was probably 2 or 3 years further down from that first event when I got talking to Andy, and we got involved in doing things, and we'd got this concept. He wanted to sort of be a little bit more out there with it and doing different things. It sparked the interest for me, and I started working with him a little bit and going around. And that then set me off with the idea of the podcast.
Right. Is that
to
still
explore
going?
that. It's not at the moment. That's paused.
Work gets in the way, doesn't it?
Yeah, I did a year, and some of the events that we'll get to talking about actually led to that getting put on hold. It's absolutely something that I'd consider sort of reinvigorating and starting again. But right now, my work is just, it's almost 24/7, so it doesn't really give me the time to do it. But when we've got a few things in place, then I'll probably get the time back that I'll be able to revisit that. So where did we go to? We were doing that podcast with Carl, and I was then at that time, because of the things I was doing with Psychics and Sidekicks, was exploring meditation and sort of relaxation things, and I talked to people about manifesting, and it just, these all sort of plant little seeds as you go along, and you think, oh, look, that, I'll try that, I'll give that a go, I'll see if this works. And I'm one of these, I have a condition called aphantasia, which is when people
my best friend
talk
has
about,
that.
Imagine this or visualise that, and I can't. I shut my eyes and I see black. At best, I might see a bit of a cloud of colour, but I can't see that, shut your eyes, imagine an apple, no chance. Donna, she's got the apple, it's on her table, it's in her room, she's got all of the things going on,
like
she
that.
sees it all.
Yeah.
She's extremely visual in her mind's eye, and I'm not. Yet I find it fascinating that you can be like that, consciously unable to visualise, and have some of the most vivid dreams, and to recall and recount what those dreams were about in detail. It's like, why can you do that when you're asleep but not when you're awake?
Yeah.
It's really, really sort of mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But so I was into sort of exploring meditation, listening to meditation as a way of sort of relaxing and sleeping, not knowing if it was working or not. I'd been talking with this lady called Yvonne, and she talked about manifestation in quite depth, a lot of depth with it. And unfortunately then I had a colleague who attempted suicide at work, not at work, sorry, a colleague at work, where I was at the time, who'd attempted suicide. And I became his sort of key point of contact as a person whilst he was going and getting some counselling and working on his gradual transition back into work. And I was the person that was sort of his key contact. And as we were going through that and the conversations we were having, he mentioned about Andy's Man Club, and that the local Andy's Man Club was struggling for space. They were maxed out, basically. The room they had was no longer really big enough for the amount of people that were turning up. And that's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. And so I said, well, get them to come along and have a chat with Donna up at the community hub in Mexborough, because we've got some space there, we might be able to do something. And we had conversations, and essentially the negative bit for us from that was that as a charity, they insisted that the space was free of charge. As a small community facility, Donna needs to generate an income to be able to keep the doors open. So that didn't fit. We couldn't accommodate them for free, and they wouldn't accommodate a small charge for it. Yet as a charity, it is a big charity, and it does have some quite a reasonable amount of reserve funds. So we sort of took an opinion at the time, was like, well, we just can't meet. There's not a common ground there, as much as we wanted to do something to help. So that didn't happen. And we got into November of 2023, and I was doing my manifestation a little bit. We had a conversation about, well, maybe we should start up our own group. And I went to bed one evening. It was a Thursday night. I put my meditation on, and I did my little bit of manifesting of, am I being am I being unreasonable with the approach that we took to Andy's Man Club, and not sort of accepting giving them space for nothing and this, that, and the other? Is it the right thing to do to set something up, not necessarily in competition, but as an alternative to them, and doing our own thing was and it just basically give me some kind of sign that I'm not being selfish, and that I do need to pursue this, and it's the right thing to do. So that was probably one of the strangest events that ensued. The following morning, I was driving up Grange Lane on my way into work. It was early morning. It was still quite dark, and just spotted a couple of figures on the side of the road at the bridge. And it was one of those double take moments. I looked, and as I was driving past, I looked again, and then I could see one of them was leaning over, and there was someone the other side of the bridge on the railings sitting down. It's giving me goosebumps just talking about it again.
Literally all over.
And so I sort of raced off up the road to turn around, and came back to see if they needed help. And I wound the window down to say, do you need any help? And then I could see clearly there was somebody that was really distressed on the other side of the bridge, and these two people were trying to hold on to him. Oh! So I got out of the car, and I went and assisted, basically talking to him, introduced myself to him. I explained that I'd done mental health first aid, and asked what I could do to help. And he was extremely distressed and distraught. These other people were just clinging on to him, and we got him up on his feet, which was a big thing, because that was just easy then to control it. And so me and this other chap linked arms with him, just so that he couldn't do anything further. And it's not a particularly big drop from where he was, but it's rocky surface, and and it was cold water, and we were in November, so it's not a good time of year. And we spent an hour, maybe an hour and a half, till we eventually, police, ambulance attended. There was somebody from the crisis team just happened to use that road on her way to work, so she stopped. She was able to talk to him, and we managed to sort of get him the other side of the fence for a while. He was extremely angry towards authority and to the police. So there were obviously other things that were going on that that were part of that situation he was in. And he calmed down sufficiently enough to get him to go into the ambulance and go off to get some treatment. But the release that you get in that realisation, the moment I was sort of driving away to go into work, of like, wow, you know, I've just been involved in an event where we've saved someone from attempting suicide. I just burst into tears in the car, got myself together, went into work, carried on like you do.
Yeah.
But for that day, the rest of that day and over the weekend, waves of emotion of the experience that I'd gone through. And I'm thinking like, and that experience is nothing compared to what this young man had gone through himself and why he was where he was at the time. So I had a conversation with Carl afterwards, and I was like, well, I've had my sign. And
Exactly. I was going to say,
I
if
explained
you needed a sign, that was definitely
what had
it.
gone on, you know, and I remember driving along in the car going, well, I did ask for a sign, but that's taking the piss. It's like a little bit more than I was really looking for. But when you do that, there is no greater sign, you know.
Yeah.
I couldn't have experienced anything else that let me know that it was right to at least give it a go.
Absolutely. And so what did you do from then on? Was it literally the next day? Did you think, right, setting up a group?
I think within the following week when we next met and we had the conversation, it was like, right, we're doing this. We had a conversation the following week, and I said, we need to do something. We've absolutely, and the two guys were like, yeah, absolutely, like, we're right behind this. We're in it with you. So I reached out to a guy called Andy Bishop, who runs Man Gang, they're based in Southampton, Hampshire region. And I'd met Andy on a course that I was doing about public speaking at the time. And he did an introduction to this and about how Man Gang came about, and just instantly connected, had an affinity with what he talked about, even though I'd not been in such a dark place as he had, and he's lost a number of friends to suicide over the years. So there was that affinity, and I just spoke with Andy and said, this is what we're thinking about, you know, is there any advice you can give us? And he's like, just do it. You know, just do it. And if you need anything along the way, just ask. And so we set a timeline on doing something before the end of the year. We were going to sort of start in January 24, but we was like, we probably need to do something before that. I have like a soft launch in December. And so we were talking about this, and there's a lady called Julia Wadrop, who you may or may not have come across, but she's Doncaster side, and she has her socials of her social jewels. So she does social media stuff and training and things like that. And we'd contacted each other over some other things related to podcasting. And Julia reached out of like, when is your group starting? Because she wanted to direct her son to us because she knew that he was struggling. So we talked about when we were going to start, and sadly he took his own life in between that conversation and is actually starting the group.
Oh, gosh.
So in probably about 4 or 5 months, I was exposed to a colleague attempting suicide, supporting him, supporting guys who probably weren't in that place, but they'd been working and they got that relationship on getting the message out, and then experiencing the event of helping to save this young man, and then experiencing this friend's son taking his own life, all in such a short space of time. And even now it's hard to comprehend all of that going on in probably in about a 4 or a 5 month period.
That's not like a sign, is it? That's like a neon sign.
Yeah.
like whoop whoop
with bells on. Yeah, with bells
Yeah.
on. And so that was how it came about. We decided what we were going to do, and then we started thinking about names, and they were like, when are we going to meet? And we were said like, well, let's, Andy's Man Clubs is on a Monday, it's a popular time, but why not sort of coincide with that? So if people don't want to go to the bigger, well-established one because they feel like, who I'm the one that's going to stick out because I'm new, give them that alternative. And we started then thinking about names, and I was like, well, if we're meeting on Monday nights, why don't we do something, a play on words?
Brilliant.
And came up with that.
I love that. And do you know what? You were saying earlier about being worried about, setting something up.
Yeah.
Almost like it felt like in competition. But this is the thing to me. We all need to be working from the same page. We
Yeah.
all need to be collaborating and sharing and joining. And because, Andy's Man Club is brilliant. I've interviewed people who are facilitators for it, but it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
And, that's the thing about this podcast. There's a different thing that's worked for different people. And the more we have out there, how can that be a bad
variety is
thing?
the spice of life, isn't
Exactly.
it? And opportunities and options
Absolutely.
for people.
Yeah.
And, we sort of followed the model that Andy's Man Club and Andy's Man Gang follow. Same sort of principles, but we very much set it out as like, look, there's sort of 3-4 core pieces to do, but if we find a rabbit hole at number 1 and we never get to number 2, it doesn't really matter. As long as you've got the opportunity to sort of to get things off your chest and to support and to help each other morally in that way, then that's good enough.
And,
so we've very rarely got anywhere near number 4.
Yeah.
But we had, we had some good conversations and some good evenings.
And was it well attended?
It sort of got, it ebbed and flowed. We got into sort of double figures at one point, and that settled for a little bit, and then it dropped off a little bit. And then my situation with work, because I work away quite a lot, impacted on that. There were some times, like last minutes, where I had to be away on a Monday and I couldn't do it, and the other guys sort of either weren't about or couldn't do things. So it's kind of, it drifted off a little while, and we kept it on as long as we could, but then my work situation changed significantly, where I'm, instead of being a couple of days a week away, I'm now sort of 4 days a week, pretty much every week. So we've had to put it completely on pause. What we might do is we're probably discussing now that we might move to Oxford at some point. Once I've made the move, then I could possibly revisit it and see whether there's an appetite to do something and get some like-minded people involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah,
and I mean,
I'll never say never.
The signs are all there.
Yeah.
And we just need more things, I think. But I loved the name. Just the way it was ace. I love play on words. So yeah. Well, I really hope that, if you do move to Oxford, and if you don't, you reignite it, and maybe this is another sign for you.
Yeah.
that, doing the podcast, that, there's a need for these things.
Yeah.
And even if it's in the 6 months that you're waiting to decide about Oxford, maybe you could still crack on with it.
Yeah, we might just have to change the name and move days.
Yeah.
But it works, it could be Tuesday nights, Friday nights.
Exactly.
That even the bit with the nights, so it's like using that as a name, and it's what was the knighthood, the origins of knighthood, and yes, it's about going into battle, but it's the collective element of it, of coming together and supporting each other.
Absolutely.
And, whether it's in a metaphorical or a mental battle, it's still a battle, isn't it?
Is,
so,
yeah.
and I, when I'd done that, I was like, I've absolutely nailed what it needs to be called.
Yeah. So, Shaun, have you got any messages for anybody that is listening, be it about setting up their own groups, be it about struggling with their mental health? What would you say to people listening?
just do it. I mean, that's what I was told. I was having thoughts and second thoughts, and not everybody needs to be into manifestation and meditation to do these things. I'm a late starter, very late starter in some of this, but there's so much available, and that you don't need lots of qualifications to get into this. You just actually need to be mindful of yourself, your surroundings, and other people, and to want to help. If you've got that desire to help other people, then there's absolutely mileage and purpose in doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. And on that note, that's a good place to just remind listeners about Have You Got 8 Minutes, Mate? Which is our campaign at the moment, which is basically a phrase which is code.
Yeah.
And it's code for I don't want to be here anymore. And again, you say about it's not all about qualifications necessarily, and this is something that we can all use as peers and friends and family members. We can have our own 8 minutes mate, and we can be an 8 minutes mate for somebody else.
Yeah.
And it's all about just saying, look, I know you're not struggling now, but if you're ever struggling, would you like me to be your 8 minutes mate? And then, vice versa. And the idea is that you message somebody and say, have you got 8 minutes, mate? You ring that person back, and you talk to them. You listen. And it's all about the listening. You listen. You don't try and fix, you don't try and solve. You just hold the space for them. And my experience has always been positive with that, because the person will go from, I don't want to be here anymore, to, go on then, I'll stop another day, or I'll stop for now. And that's all it's about. It's about intercepting that moment, that temporary thought, and trying to get beyond that. And obviously there's a whole journey after that to go on. But it's a tool that we can all use. Because what happens is people say, I did reach out. I asked my mate if he was free for a cuppa at the pub. It's like, we're not psychic.
Yeah.
We need something. No, well, no, not all of us. Yeah, some of us are, yeah. But we all need that kind of code word, or code phrase rather, that, can ultimately, literally, you're like, oh my God, I know what they mean. Oh my God, this is serious. They need help. And so check it out on the website. You can also click on the counter to let us all know whether you are an 8 minutes mate, and if you've got an 8 minutes mate. So yes, join the movement. But Shaun, once again, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure.
It starts with an itch and a tingle, and then it builds and expands. And suddenly, all at once, my legs won't let me stand. I scratch till my fingers go numb.